Today's lesson is on writing systems of linear equations. For our first problem, we have the length L of a rectangle is 1 more than 3 times the width W. Write and solve a system of linear equations to find the dimensions of the rectangle. You can see from the picture that we also know that the perimeter is equal to 42 centimeters. So first we need to write our two equations. So for our first equation, we have L equals 1 plus 3W, because in the problem it tells us that L, the length, is 1 more than 3 times the width W. So if we take 3 times W and add 1 to that, we get L, or the length. So L equals 1 plus 3W. Our second equation that we can come up with is 2L plus 2W equals 42, because this is how we find the perimeter. 2 times the length plus 2 times the width would equal the perimeter, which is 42. Now that we have our two equations, we can go ahead and set up a table to solve for L and W. When we set up our table, we're going to have both of our equations equal to L. The first equation is already set up equal to L. We have L equals 1 plus 3W. So we can just go ahead and put this into our table. The second equation needs to be solved for L. So we have 2L plus 2W equals 42. In order to solve this for L, we would subtract 2W on each side. So we would have 2L equals 42 minus 2W. We then would divide by 2 on both sides, and we would have that L equals 21 minus W. And you can see that we have this equation also in our table. L equals 21 minus W. Now we can go ahead and plug in our values for W and solve for L. So first, we'll look at the first equation, L equals 1 plus 3W. And we're going to substitute 1 in for W. So we'd have 1 plus 3 times 1. And 3 times 1 is 3. And 1 plus 3 is 4. So when W is 1, L equals 4. Now we'll see what happens when W equals 2. So we're going to plug in our 2 for W. So 3 times 2 is 6. And 1 plus 6 is 7. Now we'll see what happens when W equals 3. So we have 3 times 3, which is 9, and 1 plus 9 is 10. Next we'll substitute in 4 for W. So 3 times 4 is 12, and 1 plus 12 is 13. And now we'll substitute in 5 for W. 3 times 5 is 15, and 1 plus 15 is 16. Now let's look at our second equation, which is L equals 21 minus W. So if W equals 1, we'll have 21 minus 1, which is 20. If W equals 2, 21 minus 2 is 19. If W equals 3, 21 minus 3 is 18. If W equals 4, 21 minus 4 is 17. And if W equals 5, 21 minus 5 is 16. You can see from our table that when we plug in 5 for W, L equals 16 on both of our equations. This means that W, or the width, is equal to 5 centimeters, and L, or the length, would be equal to 16 centimeters. Now for our second problem, we have the sum of two numbers is 20. The second number is 3 times the first number. Write and solve a system of equations to find the two numbers. Our first equation of the system is going to be that x plus y equals 20. Because we know sum is addition, we have two numbers, so x and y, and that's equal to 20. So x plus y equals 20. For our second equation, we know that the second number, which the second number is y, is equal to 3 times the first number. So if we take 3 times the first number, so 3 times x, it's equal to the second number of y. So now we have our two equations. Next we can go ahead and set up our table for these equations. When we set up our table, we need to have our equations equal to y. So looking at the first equation, we have x plus y equals 20. We want to solve this for y, so we would subtract x on each side, and we'll get that y equals 20 minus x. That's the first equation in our table, y equals 20 minus x. Now for our second equation, we have 3x equals y, and that's the same thing as saying y equals 3x. And that is also in our table, y equals 3x. Now we're ready to fill out our table. So first we'll look and see what happens when x equals 0 for the first equation. So we're going to plug in 0 for x, and 20 minus 0 is 20. Now we'll substitute in 1. 20 minus 1 is 19. Next we will substitute in 2, and 20 minus 2 is 18. Now we'll see what happens when x equals 3, and 20 minus 3 is 17. Our next number is 4, so 20 minus 4 is 16. And now we have 5, so 20 minus 5 is 15. Now let's go ahead and look at our second equation, y equals 3x. So if x is 0, 3 times 0 is 0, so y would be 0. Now if x is 1, 3 times 1 is 3. If x is 2, 3 times 2 is 6. When x equals 3, 3 times 3 is 9. When x equals 4, 3 times 4 is 12. And when x equals 5, 3 times 5 is 15. You will notice in our table that when x equals 5, y equals 15 for both of our equations. So this means that x equals 5 and y equals 15. Those would be our two numbers, because you can see that 5 plus 15 equals 20, and 3 times 5 equals 15.